You've just stumbled into elder lore. Tired of the same old bedtime stories? Good, because we've got something far more exciting. We've managed to liberate some highly sensitive information from the very depths of the library's restricted section. Get ready. The untold tales of the wizarding world are finally out to play.
All right then, prepare yourselves, because today we're going to systematically dismantle one of the wizarding world's most enduring and, frankly, most egregious social injustices. We're going to discuss House-Elves. Now, for too long, this topic has been relegated to a quiet discomfort, dismissed as an elf problem, or simply the way things are. But if we, as witches and wizards, truly believe in justice, inequality, and in the inherent worth of every sentient being, then we must confront the truth of House-Elf servitude. It is, unequivocally, a form of enslavement, an archaic and abhorrent practice that stains the very fabric of our society. And it is high time we understood its roots, its ramifications, and why the fight for their fundamental rights is far from over. Let's begin with the origins, the precise historical moment when House-Elves became indentured servants, or rather, enslaved, to wizarding families is, lamentably, not extensively documented. This in itself speaks volumes, doesn't it? It suggests a gradual, almost insidious, normalization of their subjugation, a process that didn't require formal decree, because it simply became the norm. However, historical records, sparse as they are on the elves' side of the story, indicate that house-elf servitude has existed for centuries, certainly predating the International Statute of Secrecy. We see evidence of house-elves serving prominent wizarding families, like the Malfoys and the Blacks. For generations, their loyalty often described as absolute, a rather convenient narrative for those benefiting from their endless labor. Wouldn't you agree? It's been suggested that house-elves might have once been wilder, more independent magical creatures. But, over time, a unique and rather disturbing magical bond developed between them and wizarding families. This bond, it seems, was not merely one of fealty, but of profound magical compulsion. Once bound, a house elf's entire existence becomes inextricably linked to serving their master's family. And the notion of freedom itself became an anathema, a concept antithetical to their very being, conditioned over generations. Think of it, an entire magical race with unique abilities, reduced to unpaid domestic labor, their minds seemingly bent towards unquestioning obedience. How did such a thing become not only tolerated, but deeply ingrained in our culture? It's a question that should make us all uncomfortable. This isn't merely about employment, or even the most restrictive forms of traditional labor. The house-elf bond is unique and extraordinarily potent. A house-elf is bound to a family, not just a single wizard. Their magic, their very life force, is intertwined with their servitude. They cannot disobey a direct order from their master without experiencing profound physical pain and emotional distress. It's truly a horrifying mechanism. We see this compulsion acutely when a house elf attempts to defy an order. They exhibit self-punishment, banging their heads against walls, ironing their hands, a desperate, visceral response to their own inability to break free from the magical imperative to obey. This isn't voluntary self-harm. It's a magical manifestation of their inherent magical bond being violated, and it underscores the non-consensual nature of their service. How can one consent when disobedience itself causes immense suffering? The only known method for freeing a house elf, as most of you know, is for their master to present them with clothes. A simple, seemingly innocuous act, yet it severs that ancient magical bond. And for many house elves, tragically, this act is met with terror rather than joy, because they have been so thoroughly conditioned to believe that their purpose is servitude, that freedom equates to worthlessness. This psychological conditioning, spanning generations, is perhaps the most insidious aspect of their plight. It's not just physical chains, it's a profound mental and magical subjugation. Let's consider the daily reality for a house elf. Their lives are spent in ceaseless, unpaid toil. They perform every conceivable domestic chore: cleaning, cooking, laundry, gardening. They often live in cramped, Spartan conditions: cupboards under stairs, small recesses in kitchens, starkly contrasting with the opulent homes they maintain. Their rewards are not wages, but scraps of food, worn-out clothing, if given at all for fear of freedom, and the dubious praise of their masters. There is no personal life, no pursuit of hobbies, no education, no independent choice. Their identity is entirely subsumed by their service. And consider the implications. If a house elf wishes to visit a friend, or simply read a book, they must seek permission. Permission for fundamental aspects of being. It's unfathomable. Yet, this is their reality. They are not merely employees, they are property. And that, unequivocally, makes them enslaved. Why do we tolerate this? This is perhaps the most perplexing question. How has an entire magical society, one that values freedom from Muggle oppression, one that boasts of intellectual prowess and magical advancement, managed to turn such a profound blind eye to the suffering in its very midst? Several factors, I believe, contribute to this lamentable collective amnesia. Tradition and inertia. It's always been this way. This is the most common, and frankly, weakest, argument. Simply because a practice is old does not make it right. Slavery was old, prejudice was old. Progress demands we challenge outdated norms, not cling to them out of comfort or fear of change. Convenience. House elves are incredibly efficient. They perform tasks no human wizard would wish to, often with magic far exceeding that of many witches and wizards, and they do it for free. The convenience of this arrangement, I believe, is a powerful, if unspoken, motivator for maintaining the status quo. Who wants to clean their own socks when an elf can do it instantly? The myth of happiness and servitude. This is the most insidious rationalization. Many wizards genuinely believe house elves enjoy being enslaved. They point to the self-punishment for disobedience, the apparent joy in service, the terror of freedom. But this is a classic example of confusing Stockholm Syndrome with genuine contentment. If a being has been conditioned for centuries to believe their only purpose is servitude, if their very magic compels obedience, then their happiness in that state is a tragic consequence of their oppression, not a justification for it. It's the happiness of someone who knows no other way, reinforced by profound magical and psychological conditioning. Lack of awareness education. Many wizards simply don't question it. They grow up with house elves, see their parents with house elves, and it's presented as a natural order. The Ministry of Magic, shamefully, does not concern itself with house elf rights. Indeed, the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures classifies them as beings, but offers them no protection beyond basic sustenance. It's an utter failure of our legislative body. Perceived inferiority. There's a pervasive, though often unspoken belief that house elves are somehow less intelligent, less capable, or less deserving of rights than wizards. This prejudice, rooted in ignorance, allows wizards to compartmentalize and justify their exploitation. However, not every house elf accepts their lot, and certainly not every wizard is blind to their plight. Perhaps the most poignant and powerful testament to a house elf's yearning for freedom, and indeed their capacity for immense courage and loyalty, comes from Dobby. Dobby's story is heartbreaking. His servitude to the Malfoy family, a family deeply entrenched in pure blood, supremacy and dark magic, was particularly cruel. He was punished relentlessly for any perceived transgression, subjected to emotional abuse, and forced to keep secrets that weighed heavily on his conscience. Yet, despite the immense pain it caused him, Dobby repeatedly defied his masters to try and protect Harry Potter. This wasn't merely disobedience. This was an act of profound moral courage, a choice to endure suffering for a higher purpose. Dobby's desire for freedom was palpable, his longing for a sock, a hat, any piece of clothing, an emblem of his desperate hope for liberty. And when Harry Potter, with incredible foresight and compassion, tricked Lucius Malfoy into freeing Dobby, it was a moment of unparalleled triumph. Dobby, the freed house elf, became living proof that house elves could desire and could achieve freedom, and that freedom did not equate to worthlessness, but to dignity. He proved that they could choose loyalty, choose kindness, and even choose to fight. His life, and ultimately his sacrifice, stands as a powerful indictment of the system that sought to contain him. It was Dobby's plight, and the sheer apathy of the wizarding world towards it, that compelled me to act. The injustice was so blatant, so utterly unconscionable, that I simply could not stand by. And thus, S.P.E.W, the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare, was born. Now, I know. It wasn't exactly embraced with open arms. Ron, for example, found the very idea ridiculous. And even Harry, bless his heart, often seemed bewildered by my passion. But that's precisely the point, isn't it? The wizarding world's collective indifference was a barrier, a wall of ingrained prejudice and convenience that needed to be chipped away, brick by painstaking brick. My initial goals for S.P.E.W were quite modest, yet, I believed, absolutely essential. To educate the wizarding public, to make them see House-Elves not as happy servants, but as beings deserving of rights, to dismantle the comfortable myths, to lobby the Ministry of Magic, to advocate for proper wages, reasonable working conditions, and ultimately, a path to freedom for House-Elves who desired it, to campaign for their release, to free as many House-Elves as possible from their unjust bondage. We started small, with badges and a campaign for donations. The irony of collecting money for a cause so many dismissed as laughable wasn't lost on me. We faced derision, apathy, and outright resistance. People simply didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to confront the uncomfortable truth. But change, true change, rarely comes easily. It requires persistence, unwavering conviction, and the willingness to be unpopular for the sake of what is right. Every time I heard someone dismiss House-Elves as happily enslaved, it only fueled my determination. Because the argument that they enjoy their servitude is nothing more than a convenient excuse to maintain a morally bankrupt system. Then came the Second Wizarding War, and in the crucible of that conflict, something remarkable began to shift. As Lord Voldemort and his Death Eaters plunged the wizarding world into darkness, the traditional power structures were shattered, and in the chaos, the loyalty and immense magical capabilities of House-Elves shone through in unexpected ways. Consider the Battle of Hogwarts. While the students and teachers fought valiantly, who was it that remained behind to fight the invading Death Eaters in the kitchens? Who was it that wielded clever knives and boiling water, proving their surprising combat effectiveness? It was the Hogwarts House-Elves, led bravely by Creature, a house-elf who had himself been freed and had learned the true meaning of loyalty and courage, albeit in his own peculiar way. And Dobby, the free elf, returned to save Harry Potter and his friends from Malfoy Manor, performing an act of immense bravery and self-sacrifice. His death, a tragic yet profoundly noble end, served as a stark, unforgettable reminder of the true potential and inherent dignity of House-Elves. These acts, I believe, began to chip away at the long-held prejudices. When the darkest hour fell, it was not only wizards and witches who stood against tyranny, it was House-Elves, too. Their unwavering loyalty, when so many wizards wavered or defected, offered a powerful, undeniable testament to their worth. After Voldemort's final defeat, the wizarding world entered a period of unprecedented reform. With Kingsley Shacklebolt as minister and a new generation of leaders committed to justice and equality, there was finally a window of opportunity. While the process is, frustratingly, a gradual one, the conversation around house-elf rights has undeniably shifted. There are now greater protections, albeit still inadequate, for house-elves. Organizations drawing inspiration from S.P.E.W are working to educate the public and advocate for change. The outright cruelty seen during the war, particularly by families like the Malfoys, has, I believe, made it harder for the wizarding population to ignore the inherent injustices. But the fight is by no means over. The deeply ingrained societal attitudes, the comfort of convenience, and the pervasive myth of contented servitude are still powerful forces. There are still house-elves who are abused, who live in fear, and who do not know the profound joy of true freedom. There are still many in the ministry who find the topic an inconvenience. It is our collective responsibility, as the conscious members of the wizarding world, to continue this advocacy, to educate those who are ignorant, to challenge those who are prejudiced, and to remind ourselves that true justice knows no species boundaries. Every wizarding home, every wizarding institution should reflect the values of freedom and respect. So let us remember Dobby, the bravest house elf I ever knew. Let his story serve as a constant reminder that freedom is not just a privilege, but a fundamental right. And let us continue the work of S.P.E.W in spirit, if not always by name, until every single house elf who desires it can feel the liberating touch of a piece of clothing and truly know the meaning of liberty. The struggle for house elf rights is a moral imperative. It is a mirror reflecting our own society's willingness to confront its imperfections, and I, for one, will never stop fighting for it.